My name's Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants. And in this educational lesson, we are together going to be planting tomatoes, basil, peppers, zucchinis, using the Ivory Organics methods. In this educational lesson, we're going to be discussing what's the best time of day for planting your plants. We're also going to discuss, for tomatoes, the difference between determinate and indeterminate. And when it comes to planting depth, it depends on the plant. Not all plants are created equal. Additionally, we're going to discuss the value of Ivory Organics as an anti-transparent sunscreen shield, protecting the plants also from stress and transplant shock, as well as serving as an insect repellent, which is ever more important, especially at this early stage of a plant's life. We're also going to discuss fertilizers, what to look for, the difference between organic and chemical, and lastly, although perhaps one of the most important things, is discussing the value of mulch in the home garden. So let's get started. So one of the questions I get asked frequently is, what is the best time for planting your plants? And the answer to that is the later afternoon, as the plant will get to immediately reap the benefit of the cooler nighttime temperatures compared to an early morning planting that'll have to deal with the transplant shock, in addition to a continuously escalating higher temperature and drier weather compared to what would be experienced for the plant during the evening hours. So my recommendation, for if you have a choice in regards to time of day for planting your plants, the preferred time of day is the later afternoon. So another very important consideration when planting tomatoes in the home garden is to know whether or not the variety you're planting is a determinate variety or an indeterminate variety of tomato. I'll talk about the significance in just a second, but by just looking at these plants, it's very hard to distinguish any difference here. If you take a look here at this tomato plant in the cup, this one here is a cherry variety of tomato. This one over here, a Roma tomato. And the third one over here is an early girl variety tomato. As you can see here, they're all about the same size. And again, by looks, you really can't distinguish the difference between any of these tomatoes. If you take a look at the labels, so this variety here is the early girl. As you can see, it's distinguished as being a very round tomato with typical clusters ranging from 4 to 6. Then we've got here a cherry variety tomato known as the Husky Cherry Red. And the third one we've got featured is the Roma tomato. Of these three, two of them are indeterminate varieties, being the Husky Cherry Red and the early grow variety. And then the Roma tomato is a determinate variety of tomato. That means with this Roma tomato, what's going to happen is the plant's going to grow, it's going to flower pretty much within a few week period of time, and resultantly it's going to fruit, and you're going to harvest those fruit within a few week, very small window period of time, and the entire plant's going to die back after harvest. That is, again, the determinate variety, such as the Roma tomato. The indeterminate varieties, such as the Husky Cherry Red, another one of my favorite cherries, is known as the Sweet 100. And then also with the early grow variety is known as an indeterminate variety. And with indeterminate varieties, what they'll end up doing is they'll grow the entire growing season, from spring, summer, and fall, continuously blooming and continuously providing fruit, which is my preference. So when it comes to the entrance of the garden, such as this one particular planting spot where we're going to be planting a tomato, I will not be planting a determinate variety at the entrance of my garden, as I do not want to have a dead plant by mid-summer. Whereas if I plant an indeterminate variety, I'm going to have a plant that will be continuously growing spring, summer, and fall, even going into early winter. Again, compared to a determinate variety, which I'm going to put in the furthest corner of my property, where the unsightliness of a dying back plant will not be as noticeable. So keep that in mind when considering planting your determinate versus indeterminate varieties of tomatoes. So the next lesson is on planting depth. How deep do I plant my plants? And that all depends on what the plant is. And one of the plants that's very remarkably different than pretty much any other plant is the tomato. When it comes to tomatoes, it is recommended that you plant the plant deeper than the container that it was in. When it comes to other plants, such as your basil and peppers and squash, you want to plant them at the same level that it was within its container. However, when it comes to tomatoes, we're gonna plant them deeper into a, so I'm gonna go with a cherry variety of tomato at the entrance of my garden because of the aesthetic value that these tomatoes add towards the entrance of the garden with their many unlimited clusters of cherry tomatoes. It's just such an eye-pleasing thing to see at the entrance of the garden. That's why we're going with the cherry, and then we'll graduate to the early grow, and then the Roma, as we said, the determinate varieties towards the outskirts of the property. So let's get started with preparing this. And what we're going to do here is we're simply going to take our scissors and we're going to prune all of these side leaves. So if you want to come in a little closer, you can take a look here. What we're going to do is simply prune back these leaves like so. And the reason that we're pruning them instead of just planting them deep is we wouldn't want these leaves to otherwise rot below the surface of the soil. We can actually use them as a top dressing once we plant it into the mulch layer, but we're not going to plant those leaves under the ground, and that's the reason we remove them. And now we'll simply remove the plant like so, and if there's any root-bound roots, this one doesn't necessarily have it, feel free to rip those bottom 10% of those roots right off. That pruning that we've done over here by removing those leaves will offset the little disruption we've done to the root system below. And now what we're going to do is prepare the hole. As we said, when planting your tomatoes, the goal is to plant them deep. So we're simply going to prepare a hole like so. If you have any compost, whether it's homemade or you're buying it, be sure not to use a potting soil for your in-ground planting, as that'll absorb too much water. But what we're going to do is just simply add a little bit of compost to the planting soil just to help loosen it. We're already starting with some pretty incredibly good soil. And now we're going to position the tomato in the hole, and you can see we're going quite deep. Like so. We're going to now backfill it, and with the new era planting method, the goal when it comes to composting is not to add so much compost beneath the soil as much as you should be adding it as a top dressing to the soil, which is more like it would be otherwise in nature. So the traditional planting method is to basically take 50% of your native soil with a 50% compost mix. That is no longer the story. The new era planting method recommends that you put the compost in the top inch or inches of the soil instead of putting it into the mix surrounding the plant in the planting hole. Because by doing so, by putting compost deep in the hole, what's going to happen is that compost is going to break down in a matter of weeks, resulting in a plant that's going to settle. And what will end up happening is the plant will end up settling within the planting hole much deeper than was initially intended. And so to control the location of the plant within the ground, it's recommended to add the compost and any improvement to the soil in just the top inches of the soil. And that's what we're going to do here with our compost mix over here. We're simply adding it into the top inches of the soil surrounding the plant. And what's going to happen now is all of the life that's within the soil, which includes the earthworms and beneficial bacteria and beneficial fungus, is going to interact with that compost, improve the soil, and then return that as the worms tunnel themselves deeper, making way for the roots to run even deeper. So again, here we're just taking a handful of compost, adding it to the hole. We're not doing the 50-50, but that'll help feed the soil biology that's in the vicinity. And here we're going to plant our basil. There's a lot of starter plants within here, as you can see. There's at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plants. I'm going to divide this into about 2 to 3. And we're simply, again, going to remove it from the container. You can see it's got a healthy root ball. There's not much root coiling happening here at the bottom. But what we're going to do here is we're now going to separate them like so. If you want to come in a little closer, we will just find the gap between these clusters of plants, sticking my finger in between them and simply pulling them apart like so. And there's a couple more over here. My goal was to have 3, and we easily got 3 plants that we can plant at random places throughout the garden, and we'll now plant it. Again, we said with tomatoes to plant deep. When it comes to pretty much everything else, plant it at the same level that it was within the container. So you can see with the basil, we're being cautious to make sure that as we backfill the soil, we want the roots right here to be at the same level as it will be in the ground. You can see these roots are still coming out. We're gonna now add the soil, and we wanna make sure that the plant is not planted too deep, as that will lead to the first phenomenon is stem rot and potentially root rot, and that'll shorten the life of the plant. However, when it comes to tomatoes, which we planted deeper, what happens there is as you plant your plant deeper, and let's remove these leaves over here like so, what happens when tomatoes are planted deeper is all of the stem pushes out more roots, which increase the stability, both moisture and nutrient absorption, and you end up with a much healthier and more successful tomato plant. So a lot of benefits in planting tomatoes deep. You do it with other plants and it could be catastrophic. And again, the same lesson as with the tomato. Our compost we're going to be using in the top few inches, and it'll be there that we're going to mix it 50-50 with the native soil. And now we've got some more basil plants for other parts of the garden. And now we're going to repeat that same principle we did with the basil with our zucchini. Check out the life in this garden. This one over here has a pair of plants, as you can see here. There's 2 of them. We're gonna leave them just like that. These zucchini plants will, during the growing season, grow anywhere from about 2 to 4 feet long, and it's typically gonna have just one primary leader, and as it continuously creates a leaf, it'll push out more flowers and more fruit along the way. And we'll be sharing that this growing season. If there's any coiled roots, this one doesn't, but you can feel free to simply rip those off to prevent the continuation of coiling roots throughout the entire growing season. But now it has a excellent shot at just growing down and out instead of growing in a spiral. So it's important to remove those coiled roots before planting. And here we go. Again, being cautious to plant it at the same level it was within the container. And we can add a little bit more compost to this already excellent soil to continuously feed the soil life, which will in turn benefit the plant. We just planted, let me share that label with you. Zucchini squash, heirloom, Black Beauty is the variety, and that'll go right there. So the next lesson is on fertilizer. And when it comes to fertilizer, there's a lot of choices out there. Some are organic, and there's many that are also synthetic, also sometimes called chemical fertilizers. And those synthetic fertilizers are damaging to the soil biology. And even if it's not harmful to the earthworms, beneficial bacteria, and mycorrhiza fungus within your soil, it is not feeding them, and in that in turn is damaging to the overall soil biology. An organic fertilizer, like Ivory Organics, will feed the soil biology, help grow and explode those populations, which in turn will feed your plants in an organic and healthy way. Ivory Organics 6 Macros Plus is the only fertilizer on the market that has all of the macronutrients plants need. If you research what are the macronutrients that plants need, and these are the nutrients that plants need in abundance, there's 6 of them. Yet all the fertilizers are focused on only 3, and that includes nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But for the overall health, balanced nutrition, And again, macronutrients, elements that the plants need in abundance in the soil, those include nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. And this here is an example of the 6 macros plus fertilizers. Again, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. There's the super blend, which has a very high NPK with 13, 12, 13%. And then there's the premium blend, 6 macros plus, with a lower NPK but a very high calcium percentage. So one of these bags, and again, this here is the 11.8 ounce bag, makes up to 20 gallons of liquid fertilizer, simply taking 1 tablespoon per gallon of water, or these 4-pound bags can make up to 120 gallons of liquid fertilizer. Again, a tablespoon to a gallon of water. What we're going to do today is we're simply going to take a couple of tablespoons, and my favorite practice is to simply feed the plants the first week of every single month. And when it comes to feeding your plants, you want to start slower in the spring, more by May and June, as the light hours are approaching now 14 hours of sunshine and the plant's metabolism is peaking, flowering and fruiting, and then in the fall you start tapering down. But we're going to simply take a tablespoon of this product, if you want to take a look at it here, and we're going to simply scatter it around the base of the plant, like so. And as you can see with the leaves that we've pruned off, we've kept it in the vicinity of the plant. And we'll take a second tablespoon and do the same thing. And we're going to do that around our tomatoes, around our basil, and around our zucchini. So by fertilizing your plants organically, what you've done is you've also fed the soil biology. You're feeding the earthworms, the beneficial bacteria, and the mycorrhiza beneficial bacteria. And the way you accomplish that, if you take a look here on the back, just check out all of these ingredients. Feather meal, alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, kelp meal, cottonseed meal, potassium sulfate, glacial rock dust, which is very similar to azomite in micronutrient nutrition, neem cake, rock phosphate, oyster shell flour, and you can see that it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. A very complete organic fertilizer to feed that soil biology, which in turn feeds your plants. So one of the benefits of feeding your plants organically is you're feeding your earthworms. And what happens when you feed your earthworms is that they go to the bathroom. Their excrement, also known as their worm castings or worm gold, is also loaded with chitinase, which is an enzyme which the plants absorb. And it just so happens that the exoskeletons of a lot of insects are made from chitin. And when they chew on the plants that have chitinase within them, what ends up happening is instead of the plant getting stronger and healthier from eating your plants, they end up getting weaker and sicker. So by having more worms in your soil, in turn, your plants will absorb more chitinase and making them more pest resistant naturally, something a chemical fertilizer will never do for your plants. And again, I use the word chemical. Chemical is all encompassing, whether it be organic or synthetic. What I meant to say is the synthetic fertilizers, also known as occasionally as chemical fertilizers. So the organic fertilizers are significantly more beneficial and a more healthier and safer on the environment alternative to the synthetic, aka chemical fertilizer alternatives. And once you fertilize your plants, they begin to work as soon as you water. See. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to whitewash the plants, and we're going to whitewash them using this product over here, being Ivy Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard, ready to use spray, protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents. for use on your roses, fruit and nut trees, ornamental trees and shrubs, for use in organic production, healthier than latex paint and tar-based products. What we're simply going to do is we're just going to shake it well and spray it on the leaves. And even though it's currently in the shade, as the sun is passing behind the banana plant right now, you can see that we've created a very light, white, organic, and also when it dries, it'll dry porous compared to what latex paint, something you would never do on your plants. And we're also going to spray our sun-beaten basil. And again, what this is going to do is it's serving as an anti-transparent, helping the plant retain more moisture. The ingredients are also going to help keep the plant pest free. It also helps with transplant shock, any pruning or cloning. You may have noticed this little project that I've got going on over here. If you come in a little closer, what we've done here is, this is the Parthionka variety of pomegranates that I'm doing cuttings of. This is considered one of the world's best tasting pomegranate varieties. And what we're gonna do together today as well is we're going to whitewash the plants using the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard. And you can see by doing so, and being that the product serves as an anti-transparent, you can see that the leaves are now going to be protected from overexposure of too much sun. It's going to help prevent desiccation and just increase the likelihood of success. And we're not just spraying the leaves, we're spraying the entire stems as well. So we're getting complete plant protection, like so. And now we're going to continue with the squash as well. And we're also going to spray our bell pepper plants as well. Let me share with you the ingredients on the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard ready to use spray. If you take a look here on the back, active ingredients, castor, garlic, cinnamon, and inert ingredients, which are also very beneficial. Iron oxide controls the color, but limestone, mica has anti-insect properties. The milk proteins in there help with bonding. Silica, diatomaceous earth, we're very excited about having an anti-caking and oil absorbent benefit, but the diatomaceous earth also has the benefit of scratching up any insects that have exoskeletons, safe on earthworms, but if there's any beetles or scale or basically any type, or even aphids, where their exoskeletons can otherwise get scratched and lead to them drying out or desiccating due to those scratches in their exoskeleton, that is one of the repellent benefits of diatomaceous earth, which you'll find in those products that have a copyright 2019 on there. The diatomaceous earth is working its way into the product line. You'll also find it here in the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard protection again. Damaging sunburn insects and rodents, registered material for use in organic agriculture. And you can see over here again, diatomaceous earth as one of the ingredients. With the can, you can see that it's got 7 oils that are natural insect and natural rodent repellent oils. And what I want to share with you when it comes to foliar spray, that it can make this little pint-sized can 5 gallons of the ready-to-use spray. And it has also very clear directions now on if you want to make one spray bottle by adding 1/3 to a 1/2 teaspoon of the powder with 5 to 10 drops of oil and adding water. Be sure to filter the product through a strainer first to avoid the possibility of clogging. So that is also on your, when you pick up your can, if it says copyright 2019, this is the newest, latest, and greatest of the Ivory Organics family. And then you'll notice that we've also got the Blue Label products. The Blue Label products simply read whitewash protection against damaging sunburn and winter sun scald. Is an oil-free formula where the primary objective is sunburn, which we've got so many examples to share with you here in the garden, from our citrus to avocados, figs, and so forth, whether it be here in my garden or other gardens I visited where plants are burning, including roses. So be on the lookout for those if you haven't already seen them, and let's get on to the next step. Last but definitely not least is mulching. Mulching is simply adding a good 2 to 3 inch layer of wood chips around all of your plants. Be sure that when you apply it to your plants they keep some space away from the plant's trunk, as you wouldn't want the wood chips, which absorb water, causing stem rot to the plant. So you're going to keep the wood chips away from the plant and then build it up 2 to 3 inches within the root zone area of the plant. And being that we're based here in Los Angeles, there's a free source I want to share with you guys, and I was fortunate enough this year to meet several of you on the 3 trips I made out to Griffith Park this year. And it's located at the Griffith Park Compost Facility, located at 5400 Griffith Park Drive. And the value of adding a healthy 2 to 3 inch layer of wood chips, also known as mulch, around your plants is, one, it's going to save you time because it's going to eliminate your weeding time in your garden by at least 50 to as much as 80%. The other benefit of mulching is it's going to save you money by cutting back on your water bill. By mulching, you can save again by as much as 50% on your water bill. And that's significant, and it's also helpful as you won't need to be spending as much time in your garden watering by simply adding that 2 to 3 inch blanket around your plants. Talk about blanket. In the summer, it's going to help keep your soil cooler, which will help preserve all of that soil biology and also make your plants a lot happier during those hottest summer days. And in the winter, it has an opposite effect. That mulch blanket is keeping your plants and that soil biology warmer. So it's curbing the extremes of the weather simply by mulching around your plants. Additionally, there's a ton of research out there that's coming out saying that the beneficial life that exists within your mulch actually fights and combats the diseases within your soil, including Phytophthora, which leads to root rot. So mulching around your plants can also help prevent disease within your soil as well, due to the overwhelming benefits that come from doing it. And lastly, these trees are made of all of the elements that otherwise these plants will benefit from. So as these trees break down, again, due to healthy soil biology, as these elements are returned back to the soil, the surrounding plants will benefit from all of the elements that once created the trees to now make tomatoes, peppers, squash, bananas, figs, citrus, and all the other wonderful things you've got growing on in your home garden. If you found this educational lesson informative and educational, be sure to like us, share us with your friends and family, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. For those of you that have already subscribed, don't forget to hit that push bell notification to get informed of these educational videos as soon as they become released. As always, we encourage you to continue growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.